Please welcome the iconic German legend, Nadine Kessler. Nadine, thank you so much for joining me on Fara Meets. It's an absolute pleasure. Firstly, I wanted to get into your career before we then talk about your work you're doing at UEFA and then a little bit about the upcoming Euros in Switzerland this summer. Nadine, I was trying to look through the history of England versus Germany games. I mean, it was very depressing, firstly, looking the amount of games I lost against Germany. And I was trying to see if we'd ever played against each other internationally. Can you remember any of that?
I don't think there is any occasion, Farah. I think you must have been too good, and I was a late starter in the national team, so that might have been a reason why our paths never crossed. Or you were slightly older than me, if I can.
Yeah, I did. I saw that as well. Definitely slightly older. But you had an international career over between 2010, 2016. Was that right for the senior team?
Absolutely.
Winning the Euros in between that, must I add?
That was not so bad.
An unbelievable career. But Nadine, what I wanted to find out, to see if it's similar to kind of the way we started our career in England. We pretty much, as young girls growing up, started out playing in boys' teams. What was it like growing up for you as a kid, trying to get into football, and some of the challenges you faced?
Well, I think pretty much the same as for you. So I was playing with boys up until the age of 16. I started as of the age of 4, and there wasn't really much opportunities around to join a women's team. I also, to be fair, really enjoyed playing with the boys' teams in my region. And when the time had come, then just moved to let's say the first professional women's team. But certainly I was the only one kind of story that we all probably experienced at some point in our life. So a different I think reality to today, but luckily enough, I could make it and had some great experiences, even despite the lack of opportunities there were.
Yeah, amazing. I was going to ask, do you think in terms of development, because there's always that debate in football as to whether or how long females should participate in boys' teams and compete with boys until they move on and play, in their own gender sport. So, females play with females and males play with males. Because for me, growing up as a kid, I got a lot of my development playing alongside boys, learned a lot through that. But and obviously as the game has grown here in England, we've kind of stopped that, and we would rather females grow up training alongside, young girls. So do you think it helped you develop as a young player coming through?
For sure. And what I encourage now in my job is to to really have both options. And I think even though in England it's the case as you described, you can still play with boys as well. And that's in the end also, I think, the system we need, right? Wherever you feel most comfortable in. I wouldn't have wanted to miss my opportunity to play with the boys. I think I've learned a lot there. I started off as a striker and got increasingly slow in comparison to the men. So I ended up as a centre midfielder and had to learn tactics and ways to kind of circumvent the speed of these boys and still be better than them. So I think indirectly it helped me a lot to become the player that I was in the end. So I think it's about choice and opportunity. And if you, for example, go further north to Scandinavian countries, they're really adamant about the fact that girls should just play with girls.
Mm.
In Germany, it's still the case that it's really, really encouraged to play with boys. So we have all different kinds of situation all over Europe. But what is reassuring is that more and more say, okay, there should be generally more choice. And with that, I really agree.
Yeah, no, I say that myself when people ask me, did I enjoy growing up playing with boys? I think, as you mentioned there, in terms of technically and tactically, I probably learned a lot more by playing with boys because, they'd go home, they'd be on the computer, they'd be learning tactics through, the FIFA game, etc. Whereas with young girls, it doesn't seem to be a trend where a computer game and kind of learning or even going to stadiums as young girls to learn the game. They don't really when I've coached young female teams, they're never really interested in the tactical side, should I say, of the game, as opposed to the boys wanting to solve problems. And I feel like I got a lot of my learnings through that. Would you say you had similar growth in terms of with that?
Absolutely. And it's also natural, right? Because more boys are earlier exposed to going to these matches, to watching the match, to playing the match, to playing PlayStation or all these other games. It's really, I think it's normal that you maybe find the more, let's say, competitive environment there. And also, I thought it's not so bad for me to know how to hit back at a young age. So I'm glad I've learned that too. And I'm glad I also learned very early what the challenges will be equally. So it's no, I wouldn't want to miss it. But I do also understand why some girls, there are more and more examples really where they say, I just don't feel comfortable. And they're also late starters, right? That have, I don't know, incredible skills, and they come through a girl's pathway where you're like, wow, okay, it can also work the other way around. And the more girls we generally have also, I mean, there's so much opportunities also in boys teams, right? Yeah,
for sure. Well, it didn't do you any harm growing up playing alongside boys. I tried to pick out what I would imagine the peak of your career was. And I put here captain in Wolfsburg in the same year, winning both UEFA Best Women's Player and the Europa Award for FIFA World's Best Player.
The treble was in 2013. There was the double again after that, and then these very famous individual trophies came that everyone remembers more than the actual football trophies, which I'm not a fan of. So
they did. Yeah, but I was looking at them and I was like, what an achievement. So from 2013, obviously the treble, 2014 the double, and then back to back, obviously within that you won UEFA Best and FIFA Best. That's an unbelievable achievement, collectively, for Wolfsburg in terms of doing that. Back-to-back titles aren't easy. The treble certainly isn't easy. And then the individual accolades that come with that. I mean, would you say that was kind of peak Nadine Kessler career?
Yes, for sure. I mean, it was the best time of my life. I think I was professionally at my best. It was also probably the only 5 years where I wasn't interrupted with any injuries. So the biggest challenge of my life was probably, to sum it up, my own body. But this time was cool. I was 3, 4, 5 seasons in a row fit, and I could finally, make my dreams come true. And I think also with Wolfsburg, it was a club who was really not there. It was really not at an international level, had any relevance. We qualified for the Champions League as a runner-up and directly won it. No other club had ever done this, or I'm pretty sure still hasn't done this. So it was kind of cool because we created really, we made women's football Wolfsburg a top women's football club, and it still is today. So it was an incredible experience, and I'm very, very lucky to have experienced it in the end.
So not many can say that they achieved that, that's for sure. But Nadine, you mentioned some of your injuries, and you said you had that 5-year period where, you probably body was holding out for you, but you had to retire. Was it a persistent knee injury, the cause of that?
I had 11 surgeries at the end of my career on one knee. I was already, I think on a youth level, I played a lot of football matches and a lot of international competitions. So I had already 3 big surgeries when I was 19, was told it's never going to happen, I should stop. And then at the age of 21, I had an infection and another 3 surgeries. And then at the end of my career, another 5. So I was really hitting the ground, and there was really no way out that I could continue. So it's been certainly a big part of my story that was at times not easy to overcome, but that certainly marked me. And you have to see the good things in life, right? So at least you start the next life a little bit younger, the next career, but certainly was really tough at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I was lucky to go for my career with not many major injuries, so that must have been frustrating. But let me ask you about the mental side of it. mentally, how did you cope, and was there support around at that time for you mentally if you was struggling or to cope with these kind of injuries?
I mean, I guess you will agree. I mean, there was absolutely nothing.
I mean, I would agree here in England, but for us, it looked as though from the outside, the Germans were so far advanced to us here in England. And I guess we always looked at that and thought that, Germany, the German players, they have everything.
Well, we're kind of professional, but we're also Germans after all. So, crack on and play your football and don't whine too much about your injury. No, I think I really, first of all, I want to say I think it's really great how also the powers have shifted a little bit today, and players have their voice, and not just another positioning versus their clubs. I think back then, if you were injured, times could have gotten quickly rough, and you could have been the best player in the world, and the next
like
day,
he was at the time.
like it was, and it was really not an easy time for me to handle this situation because there was not as much support, and I went all over Europe and Germany also to find the right doctors to support me with, because I wasn't just not playing football anymore. I really struggled privately. I couldn't handle my private life from a physical perspective, so I needed help on all ends, not just mentally. But I took care of this mostly myself, and I think that's really great that clubs today are more equipped to help players. I think it's also great that players, are encouraged to raise their voices if they are not well, and draw some lines. So I think it was certainly not it's not easy if you lose your job, and we don't see this as a job. It's what we love to do. But then if you were also a bit afraid of your next life, which I honestly was a bit like, what am I doing? My knee constantly hurts. So I was was a tough time, but I'm really glad in the end how I got out of it. And the support network that I found was fantastic. And I'm really grateful for these people that were there at the time for me.
Yeah, I mean, support networks are so important, especially when, the professional side of the women's game wasn't, I guess, available, certainly during our time. But you're right in terms of the progress that the game's making. It's a real positive. But obviously it means your career in football was cut, really short. We say 27 years of age. Did you, going into football, prepare yourself for after football? Did you, in terms of education, did you stay in education so that you kind of had a focus on after football, or did you fall into a role after football?
No, I really was there. I was the prepared German. I studied. I studied. I did my bachelor, my master in parallel. Even in my times in Wolfsburg, I worked. I had a 20-hour job in parallel. I remember I was playing the Euro final, and I was writing emails the Saturday before the Women's Euro final, and my boss kept texting me. It's like, stop writing emails. You're gonna play the Euro final tomorrow. But I really liked a little bit to have a variety in my life, and to also see some different people outside the football world. We love each other in our world, but sometimes it can also be quite refreshing if we see someone else, if we hang out all the time together. So I tried to be ready, because I was also so young, so injured, and everyone kept telling me every 2 years, yeah, your career's over. Yeah, your career's over. So I was like, okay, I better be ready for my career to be at some point over. So I was lucky to have this, let's say, educational part kind of done when I was really at the end of my career, and therefore could, not smoothly. It's always difficult to find a new job. I did a lot of stuff after I retired and tried a lot of things out to figure out where I landed. I also commentated a bit, and I mean, I'm nowhere near the commentator and expert as you are, but I love
I'm sure you are.
No, trust me, I'm not. But I love this experience too. I did it back then for the Zone and international men's leagues and stuff. And So I tried to find my way really and be ready for when then the opportunity would come up, and luckily an opportunity came up.
Yeah, and I think it's stories like yourselves that, certainly for these young females growing up into the game, should listen to and prepare for, because, certainly here in England, in terms of education, it takes a backseat a little bit, and, our sole focus is to be the best footballer we can be, and we don't really prepare ourselves for after football. But I mean, if you was to listen to your story there, I'm sure some would, take real inspiration from that. But your current role now is, am I right in saying, managing director of women's football at UEFA?
Absolutely, yeah, that's the
Perfect
right.
role. So can you just share a little bit about what that kind of means underneath the big title?
Under the big title and the exciting suit, you mean?
Something like that.
Well, that means I'm responsible for women's football across Europe, across 55 countries, and all the competitions we have in Europe, from the Euro to the Champions League to all youth tournaments, Nations League, but also all developmental work we do, for example, with countries like England and others, through projects and funding streams. So a little bit, let's say, the strategic lead for European women's football, together with everyone who plays a key role in it. So lots of good football stakeholders involved to drive things forward.
I don't know how you remember all of that. It's lost me already. There's so much roles within one role.
Sorry, you know how it is to work in women's football. You never do just one job, no?
Exactly. So Nadine, obviously, I mean, I'm sure since joining UEFA, lots of changes would have happened. So what would you say some of the big changes that have happened since, yourself joined UEFA? Where to start, should I say?
It's. I mean, obviously, it's really been a collective effort in the last. I'm now 8 years actually here. I started kind of in the year of the 2017 Euro. If I compare now this Euro to where we were in England and where we're going to go in Switzerland and generally the way forward, then it's really remarkable. I think we've established in these last 8 years in Europe, especially, but also across the world, that women's national team football is amongst the very, very top sporting events in the world. Our events have a scale and size and investment that is unheard of for most men's sports. Even a women's Euro in England, people didn't know that, but it was already bigger than Wimbledon. It was bigger than Tour de France. It was bigger than most men's leagues other than Premier League, La Liga, and Serie A in terms of viewership. Wow. So people can sometimes not compare it very well with how big a women's World Cup is or a women's Euro already. Now next summer we will be at 500 million for this tournament, and it's a really successful sporting and economically interesting competition now. I cannot compare budgets to when I started, because it's just a whole other landscape. And and I think you see that across all competitions that we run, also the Women's Champions League, how much this has changed. We discuss it probably in a second a little bit, but before I started the competition we mostly played in, there were no changes for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now we are changing the whole competition, add a new one, and that everything in 4 years where we just changed. So it's really been so quick what happened across all competitions there are, but also with what a great job certain countries do, and how culturally women's football really has been becoming a key part across many European countries.
Yeah. For sure. I think I remember, Nadine, if I'm right, maybe my first Euros, there was probably 8 or 12 teams taking part. If I'm right, I might be mistaken, but I'm sure it was maybe 8, 2 groups of 4, or maybe 3, and the best third runner-up, if I can remember. So you think of the growth, throughout UEFA, and as you mentioned, the Euros in particular, how many teams are now participating?
The qualifiers, now we're at 53, so there's only one country missing, and even that, like for all youth, whatever, Champions League. The goal is always to get 55 countries. That's the maximum we can have. And we are now reaching full capacity, which shows you again as well, we're trigger development, countries come on board, and that's exactly what you want, because that's what, get them involved in women's football. So it's been really great and a fun job to work in the last few years, because you see what you change,
So many changes you've done, but we're going to talk about the promise UEFA have made in a little minute. I just want, before we go on to that, because we talk about Champions League and we had a little bit of a laugh off air about, the English team's going to win it this year. But as of next season, there's going to be the new format, right, for the Women's Champions League. Can you kind of share with our listeners what that looks like? Is it similar to the new male format?
Exactly. It's for the Women's Champions League. It's similar than what the fans now got to know through the Men's Champions League. Our league stage, however, will be with 18 teams, so 2 more than today, with more teams directly seeded to that league. And then again, the exciting new elements that, you don't play home and away against the same team. You play 6 different opponents. You also play opponents, let's say, that are rather of your strength. So you will see some top clashes earlier, because the draw will allow us to do so. And then there will be a final league ranking at the end of this league stage, which will be, probably, we believe, much tighter than what we see now in terms of predictability of the outcomes and who makes it to the quarterfinals. And there will be a second or another stage before the quarterfinals for some teams that don't directly qualify to the quarterfinals. The top 4, the next 8 will have to play a playoff to compete for the last remaining 4 slots for the quarters. So there's always something to play for, even if you're very low down in the ranking. In the league stage, if you make it under the top 12, then you still have your foot halfway into the quarterfinals. So it should be quite dynamic in the end, and some good matches, we believe, within the Women's Champions League. We're also now awaiting the outcomes of our new commercial cycle. So we are in the next month or so defining our new broadcast partners. So we also hope that we can do some good deals there to give the competition more visibility, which it needs. Mm-hmm. And then there's the second competition, which I think is very important to mention too. It's not just about, getting the Englands and the Germanys and the France and the top 5 into a better place, but we are at the very, very early stage still of our development. So we really want to drive also growth in different countries. Hence, we created this second competition that hopefully, generally provides more playing opportunities for more clubs. So more clubs also can get to a decent level overall in the long term. So this combined, I think, really gives us a good structure, a good base. 91 clubs in Europe will compete now. That's a huge number.
Oh, yeah.
So if you think of the opportunities that will create then again for players and coaches, it's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. And as I said, if it's, I was a bit apprehensive about the new format of Champions League, certainly with the men. I absolutely love it. And I love it because it's so it used to be so predictable. The group stages, you kind of knew who was going through. The last couple of games of groups, didn't really matter because, top 2 mainly qualified. And I think the fact that it went down, certainly for Manchester City, that, the last day. So for us here in England, looking at that format was super exciting. So I think it certainly made it a lot more engaging and exciting for a neutral. If your team, aren't in the competition, you can kind of follow and see what tends to happen. Really exciting. And as you mentioned, you get to see the best play the best, earlier in the competition than normal. But Nadine, let's talk about this UEFA promise. So they've promised, hopefully I've got this right. They've promised to commit €1 billion, so 830 million, to women's football over the next 6 years in a bid to make it the most played sport by women in Europe. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you get that
Okay.
absolutely right.
So my question is,
for me.
talk to us a little bit about that promise and how they're thinking about spending it.
Well, the 1 billion that we announced is basically um, associated to the new strategy we created that will be rolled out across Europe, that we've developed together again with federations like yours and clubs and football stakeholders all over Europe. So that is how we generally work to roll this out and to create the next phase of growth. I think we had some incredible momentum, but now really with that investment generally and the 1 billion that is committed to the strategy, we want to not just make sure women's football is anchored as the hub of professional football in the world. I mean, I think Europe has already some strong arguments to claim this role, but I think we should really aim to make it the place to be for professional opportunities. And on the other hand side, we also know we have some work to do in terms of changing mindsets and improving openness across many countries, so women and girls have access already on a grassroots level. So the 1 billion will be basically committed to various projects that we roll out ourselves, that we roll out with federations, that target talent development, that target grassroots football, to improve infrastructure, that help to improve our competition. So it's really from the bottom to the top of the pyramid. The money that will be spent has the idea to elevate the whole game all over Europe.
I mean, it's a huge investment to really grow the game and take it to a new level. What are some of the initiatives that UEFA are thinking of implementing in order to, make it the most played sport by women in Europe?
Well, I mean, I can't reveal projects that are not announced yet.
That's fine.
But good question. But we will for sure have one big project very soon coming that will actually help support, work together with many of our fantastic domestic leagues we have already in Europe. We want to be more on their side. We want to support them better because we really believe that now it's the time that, no offense, we're very happy that England does well and other countries do well, but we need 5-10 domestic leagues that do well.
I agree.
Because that is what makes our sport a job. That's also what makes the Champions League better, England better, Italy better, whatever. If there's a market beyond one's own market, both as an athlete where you can go and play in, but also economically, commercially, because it would be pretty cool if, Germany would be interested in the WSL and an English broadcaster would be interested. So I think that will be one of the key projects that we will roll out together with domestic leagues and to help really create what we said, at least 6 professional leagues, at least 3,000 professional playing opportunities in Europe. So one project will go in that direction. The other one will be going into how can we improve talent pathways. I think that's a big problem still across, let's say, the whole of Europe. So what does it take to have a good talent pathway for girls who really want to make it professionally, but also girls who want to play recreationally? So we'll create a program that will map this whole situation and then help federations, because they need to implement it in the end, to ensure that there's always an opportunity in place if for girls to take part in the game. But the competition changes are already mentioned to you. So there are many other projects also related to growth of attendances and others. But they are. You're a bit early. They will be now rolled out or started in the next year, and we're just in the preparation phase. But really across the game, I think that's the key message. We don't want to just focus on the elite, because in the end, if we don't open the doors of our, I don't know, 150,000 grassroots clubs we have out there in Europe, which is a huge chance, then what are we doing here? You know, I mean, it starts also there, and so it needs to come from both angles.
Yeah, you answered a part of the question. That pathway and amateur kind of level of football is so important to me, but you've answered it, and you've told me there's investment there, and there's, as you say, that recreational kind of opportunity for players. But you spoke there about sponsorships. I know you can't tell me the sponsors that you're talking with, but is a part of that sponsorship also talking to media outlets and coverage so that there is more visibility, as you say, across Europe of different leagues or Champions League, so that so there's more broadcasters invested in women's football across, whether it be the Euros or whether the Champions League or the start points, and maybe filter down domestically?
Yeah, that is of course the idea. And if we take Euro as an example, Farah, the a few years ago, honestly, the visibility our tournaments had, I mean, it's not comparable to what we talk about now. But now the interest from broadcasters in a Euros or World Cup, I mean, it's huge. We have deals all over the world, and on over 200 territories, and they are very important partners. And I think the same we need to now achieve also for club football, which I talk equally now for the Women's Champions League or domestic league, right? You know it very well. It's mainly, club football is mainly a domestic matter, but it would be good, of course, again, if we can involve more media and broadcast partners to actually show the greatness of European club football, because I believe, I mean, as the WSL is, but also some other leagues really have stepped up their game, and I think it's also quite fun to watch a Champions League. It's actually quite fun to watch it all if you're a club football fan, right? So certainly these conversations, or the new tender that is currently out there specifically for the Women's Champions League, will also drive that interest further.
It's a big statement, though. I don't think we've seen kind of figures like that in the women's game.
It's certainly a big commitment, and it's certainly something we stand behind, and we have said, I really don't know others' budgets, and I think I'm not entitled to anyway talk about it. So nice try.
Nice. Really got
you. It takes some investment generally, but to be fair, also I think that's an important point to make. It's a lot of money, but also women's football starts generating its own money. We're also putting a lot of effort, and that's also, I think, a key message for everyone out there, is like we're putting a lot of effort and also showing that these competitions and the inventory we offer is of a certain value, and that partners have to, of course, also pay a certain value to be associated with women's football. I think it's key that our whole system, our whole landscape, also, other than loving the game, we never should lose that, but also becomes a bit more economically driven, and say, hey, we have the ambition to make our own money. We don't want to depend on men's football for the rest of our entire existence, because I think there is a market out there, and the more you prove there's a market out there, the more you can also invest again. Because I think that's what CEOs need to see, CEOs in clubs, CEOs in governing bodies, CEOs in other roles. You have to show them the business case of women's football and why it is worth investing, and when it can come back. And that, I think, is super exciting, because I think we really entered this era now. We see it also with all the investment coming in generally. So a very good trend.
So what, in terms of success of the investment, what will you measure success based on?
Well, we have clear targets associated to these goals that I just mentioned. We have targets for how we measure success for professional women's football. As I said, 3,000 professional players, 6 professional leagues. We have targets for how many girls we want to see playing for the talent development pathways. We want to have 55 different clear pathways in every country. And with the big one is also we want to be women's football is already the most played sport in Europe and the world, but we want it to be the most played sport in every of our countries, which is not the case. So we therefore also will measure this and anything that is behind these big headlines. You can be reassured that then here the German comes through, that there is a clear mark and a target on how to get there. So because it's our responsibility, of course, also to report back and to show that the investment was worth it.
Love that. Thanks for answering that one. Let's talk then. You've mentioned it. We spoke a little bit about it. The Euros in Switzerland this summer, 2025. I was in Switzerland.
Are you coming?
Well, I was there recently with yourself doing the Nations League draw. So that was exciting. So I'll be back, hopefully. But
people are still talking about you.
On the draw? Oh, in good ways, I hope.
So you're natural.
Oh, thank you. So just talking about the Euros, we had the last Euros were held here in England, and we've seen how big they were in terms of, bums on seats in stadiums and figures watching, across TV channels. How big are we expecting this Euros to be in Switzerland in the summer?
Bigger than in England. I
For
know
real?
you English.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited. I hope so.
It's going to be bigger. And I still stand behind with what I said many times, that we want to sell it out. I think that is the biggest message. Everyone always talks about, a World Cup final or Wembley or, the opening match, the Champions League final. I don't want to sound in any way arrogant or whatever, but it's not so difficult anymore to sell these matches out. What is very difficult is to sell out matches
that are not so big, or on paper not so big.
Yeah, and not non-host countries. In England, of course, your matches were all sold out, but non-host country matches where I think we're averaging around 11,000-12,000. So and so I think that would be the nicest message for our community, to say, hey, we can sell out every match, no matter which country plays where. And no tournament organizer has ever achieved that, I think, for any women's sports event. So that shows you exactly, I think, our ambition. And I think it looks like, if it works, we have, as I said, good sales. And the other very positive fact is we have about, at the moment, 30% traveling fans. Which is never happened in any women's tournament in England, where we're at 17%. And we really have people coming from all over the world. The USA, I think, in the 10th position. Australia, we have over 120 different countries here. People really come to watch the Women's Euro and have a good time in Switzerland. And alone 30,000 English already, but don't get too excited. 41,000 Germans.
Okay,
so
always. No, but I think you're right, Nadine, in terms of, it's very easy to, well, not easy, but it's easier now, certainly in the women's game, to sell the big games, the big cup finals, the World Cup finals, Euro finals, Champions League final, here in England, FA Cup finals. But it is those, so-called smaller games that we really struggle to get bums on seats, certainly here in the UK, and we've seen it. We saw it here in the Euros, 4 years ago. We had the same, when England were playing, stadiums were sold out. When there was other teams playing, the stadiums wasn't, certainly wasn't full. So how important is it? And for Switzerland, the FA there and UEFA to try and, fill those seats for the teams that are probably not as attractable or sellable?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important. And also that these countries who haven't had traditionally such an amount of traveling fans as you or Germany or France or whatever, that they start having their traveling fans too. In England, the amount of tickets that participating teams sold was not very high. Now it's very high.
Mm.
I mean, we hear from a lot of countries they double, triple their sales, and that is nice too, because again, anything that shows growth together in many countries, in many markets, that is for me what reassures me, what shows us that we are going in a good direction, and not just a hot bubble, a short-term hype, but into a future where we create collective euphoria, and stand behind it. So that's what we want. That's also normal standards for men's Euro. That's approximately the same share of international travel fans as well that you see in men's tournaments.
Mm.
And of course, as a tournament organizer, you got to be a bit more relaxed and think, oh, I don't need the whole of Switzerland to come to the tournament.
Yeah.
It's a reassurance. I think that helps everyone again to invest more.
I was going to ask how excited you are for the Euros, but I think throughout this interview, I haven't needed to ask that question because I can already feel the excitement. I'm excited. I can't wait for the summer. What are we saying for the Euro final? Are we expecting a Lionesses, a Germany repeat?
Do you want to hurt us again? Or is that the last line you want to finish your podcast on?
No, I was going to ask what Germany's chances are.
Well, honestly, I mean, I think the German team has, I don't know, shown some good performances lately. Some very talented players in their row. The team seems to be quite stable. But as you know, I am now a neutral UEFA official. So, forecasts are not to be made by me, but you, when you do draws with me.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like it to be a Germany-England because I'm not confident that will beat Germany this time round. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, look, I hope the Euros is a success. I hope, obviously, the investment and the growth of the game continues. And I have no doubt with somebody like yourself, Nadine, in charge of that. We have no doubts in terms of the future of the women's game. I'd just like to thank you for giving me your time. Hopefully, we'll see each other in the summer in Switzerland.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.